Right, today's video is about the book called Good Adventure, and it is written by Nigel and Tony Crowther, and Mr. Crowther is with me right now, and we would like to hear from him about his adventure to Australia. Yeah. So, Mr. Nigel, introduce yourself first.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, I'll introduce myself. I'm Nigel Crowther.
Right.
My late brother Tony co-wrote the book that we're talking about, but it's really based all the more on letters, a lot of airmail letters that our mother had written back to her family in Manchester when we emigrated in 1951.
Right.
So we're like many, many other people, particularly in Australia, who they're Australians now, but their forebears, their grandparents, parents, or whatever, emigrated out there.
Right. Okay. So, so you have mentioned in your book, why was it is a good step to leave everything behind in Britain and move to Australia.
It was a good step, and it would have been if you notice. I'm back here at home, and we've come home. We're only there 3 years.
Right.
But we went because after World War II, I was born at the end. Well, after the war, and we were still deprived. Things in the UK were difficult. I can remember even as a child, sweets were rationed until the 1950s, and other things. My father had been in the army, came back out of the army in 1946 when I was nearly a year old.
Right.
And they settled down. They were married in 1940, my parents, and now they could be together for the first time, really.
Right.
And we were there, but it was hard going. And at some point, which is mentioned in the book, they made a decision that they would emigrate, because Australia, apparently they had been in the war, of course, but life was easier there, and there were more opportunities than in the UK.
So how old were you then when you emigrated to Australia with your parents in?
When we left, it was 1951. I was 6, and my little brother was 1. I mean, he had his second birthday on the ship just as we arrived in Australia.
Right.
So that age. And when I came back, I was 9. We would have stayed. Dad bought a plot of land outside Melbourne. We were in Victoria all the time.
So what were your experiences over there? How was your life over there, and how did you spend that time over there? And what have you mentioned about your life in Australia in this book? So give us a review.
Yes. The book starts with a sort of. It's based on all my mother's letters, but I've written. My brother wrote a bit as an introduction.
Right.
Then I wrote the sort of narrative because I can remember nearly all of it. I'm so blessed with a good memory, I suppose. And so it talks about in the beginning the book, which could be the experiences of many, many families like ours.
Right.
But it talks about my infancy and things at home in the Manchester area, and then suddenly this idea, which gave me great homesickness at first.
Right.
Of the family, having to leave the family behind, doting grandparents, you might never see them again.
Right.
And I recall how awful that was, really, and it must have been even worse for them. But actually, the book is positive because, looking back, most of my memories of Australia are really wonderful and good. Even though we were only ever in the migrants' hostels, we never got into a house on the land my father had bought, because my grandparents, in the end it was cancer that came into their experience and they died. But we did get back in time to be with them.
Okay.
So it's generally very positive, but I've been honest about my feelings as a child of 6, 7, 8, or just 6 really. The homesickness, being in the hostels, they weren't the luxury, the Ritz, by any means, but I've got good memories of most of the time.
So you want to mention any good memories about your
Yes. Well, first of all, the less good ones, if you like, since it's all on the same, it's all part of the same thing. My mother wrote back very positive things to her parents and her brother.
Right.
I was loving school and I was doing well in this and that. Well, I wasn't loving school at first. She wasn't lying, but she didn't know how I really felt in here. At first, I've said it's not denigrating the school in Williamstown. It was a good school and it still is. I've revisited it. But at that time I was introduced to corporal punishment. I got the whack for a minor point.
Right.
We were kicked about in the bus queue and you were bullied and all this, and it was awful.
Right.
But it wasn't the school's fault, it was just early days in a land as far away from our country
Okay.
as you can get,
Uh-huh.
almost. And then after we moved to another hostel, another
Mhm.
wadding, suddenly I get really lovely memories because it was still Nissen huts
Mm.
and communal toilets and so on, but there was a sort of camaraderie and
Mhm.
friendly, friends in school, nice trips out in Victoria,
Right.
holiday in Lawn on the coast, and so really I've got very good memories.
Mm.
But my mother is always very, very positive because she hoped in vain that her parents and brother would come out and live with us. They
Mm.
never did.
Right.
That was never going to happen.
Mhm.
But she was more than a little positive.
Mhm.
I think they edited out anything that was negative.
Mm.
If I got into trouble or if anybody got into trouble,
Right.
if
Okay.
my father, the police got him once because his car, they said he was speeding and the car wouldn't do the illegal speed.
Mhm.
So now the Australian friend said, boy, you'd better keep out of his way. He'll be trying to find this pommy and get you, for what you've done, because he complained about it.
Right. Yeah.
So she edited out, my mother edited out
Mm.
anything negative,
Right.
and it's all very positive. What I really did like was the trips around Port Phillip Bay,
Right.
Aspendale, Carrum, Frankston,
Mhm.
to the beach. Wonderful, really. And Australia was wonderful.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, have you visited Australia again?
Well, I
once
have.
you came back here.
Yeah, but my great regret is that it was so long after.
Right.
I've travelled a lot in the world and I've seen other continents,
Mhm.
but I didn't get back to Australia till 2012,
Right.
and I really kicked myself for that because
Mm.
I could have gone and seen the hostels still open.
Right.
I think the Nunawading hostel closed in the
Mm.
1980s.
Okay.
It housed the Vietnamese boat people later, and it was still going, but now, of course, it's gone. There's just a heritage walk.
Mm.
And I went back in 2012 and
Right.
alone. I revisited Perth, went across on the Indian Pacific Railway,
Mhm. Mhm.
was in Melbourne, got to see places I'd known,
Right. Yeah.
have friends there, but they're not connected with our earlier emigration.
Mhm.
And then I went up to Sydney, which was new territory for me, but I've got friends there too,
Mhm.
and stayed with them in that beautiful
Okay.
place.
Okay.
So overall, I've got wonderful memories, and I'm
Mm.
glad I've been back.
Mm.
Sadly, my brother, he died rather suddenly, although he's younger than I am, and he never got back there. I'm sad about that. But
Right.
he did a lot of the work on the book,
Mm.
compiling the letters, we put them in order,
Mhm.
and he was very keen.
Mm.
So,
So,
yes,
so,
it's partly
so
him
what
as
would
well.
you tell your the people who are interested in this book? Why should they buy this book?
Well, I mean, I know that in Australia some people have bought it.
Mm.
It's. My mother said at the end of her first letter
Mm.
to her parents, "I'll be very happy to come back and see you all again when we've had this good adventure."
Right.
And it was a good adventure,
Okay.
even though they didn't get back. Well, they got back here, but nobody
Mhm.
came to Australia, I should say.
Mhm.
So I think it may be of great interest to emigrants, people who've
Mhm.
emigrated. Today's Australians, apart from the Aborigines, everyone must
Mhm.
have come there from somewhere else,
Right. Okay.
or
Okay.
been born there and their ancestors did.
Mhm.
And so it may be of great interest, as I've already found,
Right.
with
okay.
people who did what we did. Our story could
Mm.
be their story.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes. So if anyone is interested in your book, where they can buy this book?
Well, they'd need to apply to me.
Right. Through the
Yes.
given email addresses and the website.
Yes.
And
Well, the website, sadly, has gone since my brother passed away.
right.
Something has lapsed, and I don't know. No, they can't find it. So
So
that's a bit of a bad point.
Can they contact you on your email address?
Yes,
If
if that's on there, I would suggest
Mm.
Nigel Crowther
Mm-hmm.
2. That's the number 2
Mm-hmm.
at gmail.com.
All right.
And
Okay.
I'd really recommend it because it's meant a lot to us as a family,
Mhm.
and it means a lot apparently to people who've done what we did,
Yeah.
whether
okay.
Australian or other countries.
Mhm.
That people emigrated,
All right.
and we came back for family reasons.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I think we'd have stayed.
All right.
And I might have
okay.
been talking like that now, in Australian, but we're not. We've come back.
All right. Okay. Thanks for listening, and thanks for the interview, Mr. Nigel,
Thank you. Well, thank
about
you
your
very
book, you know, and let me show you one more time, you know, and let me get a little bit closer,
It
yeah.
was a good adventure.
Get good adventure, yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. Thanks very much. Yeah. Thanks
you.
for listening.
Thanks
Bye.
a lot.
Bye.